Hello, this is Janet Michael. In addition to hosting The Valley Today each weekday at noon on the River 95.3, I also produce podcasts, and I'm excited to introduce you to a new podcast series in partnership with Lord Fairfax Community College. Having provided higher education and career training for the past half-century, LFCC is tightly interwoven into the fabric of the Northern Shenandoah Valley and Piedmont regions. Join me every week for conversations with current and former students to hear their funny and inspiring stories as we learn about their journey to higher education, the role that LFCC has played, where they are now, and where they plan to go. We'll also talk to current and former professors about their experiences and best memories of LFCC over the past 50 years. Get every single episode as they're released on our website at theriver953.com under the podcast tab, or you can subscribe for free in Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, on Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for LFCC Stories. Hello and welcome to The Valley Today. I am your host, Janet Michael. Happy Wednesday as you are listening to the show today. We, of course, have pre-recorded our conversation. We are chatting today with Carl Knobloch. He is the District Director for Virginia out of the Richmond District Office for the Small Business Administration. And Carl, I'm really glad that you are taking some time to meet up with me on the screen today because we're talking about two pretty important pieces of help for a large part of our communities these days. So we're going to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And in the second segment, we're going to talk about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. But let's start, Carl, with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. This is huge, isn't it? Or am I blowing it out of proportion? Because I do kind of tend to do that sometimes.
Well, first of all, Janet, thank you so much for having me here today. Truly appreciate it. But yes, this is a grant in a lot of people's eyes was long overdue because probably the hardest hit sector was the restaurants. And when this pandemic hit, they had mandatory shutdowns by government and everything. They didn't know how to make themselves survive. And we've seen a lot of them close their doors because of it. And those that have survived, finally something has come their way. And so we're really excited about offering this piece of grant to these restaurants.
So give me the details for how this program works.
Okay, the big thing is it's really simplistic. You go online, you just register yourself, and you go through a simple application. And it really is simple. I mean, I think SBA's learned something over the past year with the pandemic, with the different finance programs, from economic injury disaster loan to 3 rounds of payroll protection program to SVOG, the shuttered venue, now the restaurant. We've learned that make it simple. And so this is probably the best one for showing how to make it simpler. But the big thing is it's open to so many different operations that a lot of people wouldn't even think about. When they think restaurant, they think it's a fixed brick and mortar location. It's not. It's food trucks, which is a huge market that a lot of people forget about. The local coffee shop, the snow cone stand that's only open during the season. The donut shops.
Your kettle corn people that would travel to festivals that didn't happen this past year.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Your caterers, which have had really nothing to help them either. When you think of all the wedding venues that got canceled and everything else, that's a huge group that got hurt. So there's pretty much wide open. And a lot of people don't realize it's also wineries. It's also breweries. So we've literally all encompass anything that's food and beverage.
I did not realize that wineries and breweries were included either until I started looking at the list on your website of everything. And I thought, wow, that makes sense. I wouldn't have thought of that. But yeah, that makes sense. And the wineries and breweries, that was like a duh moment.
Yeah. But a lot of people didn't even correlate that because as soon as you hear restaurant, you think they're not part of the puzzle. The big important piece with those type venues like that is that 33% of the revenue has to come from person to person. So it's face to face. It's not people that are distributors, they're basically producing and just shipping it out. So that stipulation was put in there to make sure that we were focusing on the right group.
And that's interesting to note too, because I did see also when I was looking at the website that there is certain pots of money set aside for different groups of people in these different categories based on how much money they may have lost, how many employees they have.
Yeah, the big thing is that the first uh, round that just released is focused on women, veterans, and socially economically disadvantaged, and those that generate less than $500,000 a year of revenue. So that's the first sector. It's going to be totally focused. People can still put their applications in, but the ones that are going to be looked at first is that group to make sure they are recognized.
And that is open right now. As people are listening to this on Wednesday, the 12th, that application process is open for somebody to go and make and apply right now, isn't it?
Correct. It opened last Monday at 12 noon. So it's been going. And basically, in the first 36 hours that it was open, we took in 186,000 applications.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that is another tribute to the need. That's another one of those things where you realize, wow, when you start putting numbers to something like that, we may not have, as individuals, thought about what kind of impact it was having on our local restaurants and places like that. But oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then when you sit there and you put that in context, that we only have $28.6 billion. So this, in our eyes, is going to be like the first round of the payroll protection program, where the money came out and pretty much in 2 weeks, all the money was gone. And so then Congress has to kind of make a decision. Do we invest more, or we say that's it? So, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Congress in all likelihood to deal with this.
And it's another reason why you should always be in touch, whether it's via email or text message or phone call to your particular congressman in your particular district.
Yes, the congresspersons are very vital when they talk about the different programs, when they create, because a lot of people get upset at us at times, and we sit here and said, you need to talk to a congressional person because they're the ones that laid the guidelines. We're just implementing.
So, is there a deadline? Is it until the money runs out? How long do some of these restaurants and other places have to get that application in?
The uh, the applications will stay open until, as you said, the funds are gone, and we feel the funds are going to go fairly quickly. And we hope that Congress is hearing uh, due to the demand that they'll look at potentially adding future revenue to keep the program going, so we take care of all the entities that are trying to partake in this program, which, we've had a lot of interest. A lot of people asked a lot of really good questions to make sure they meet the criteria and all those type things. So we're excited from that standpoint. And, the formula for calculating, we tried to make it simple. So it's like, if you were in existence before 2019, basically you take your 2019 profit or gross revenue, and you think about it, that's pretty much everybody's best year because the economy was really rolling. 2020, it collapses. So you subtract your gross revenue from 2020, and that's your number. Unless you got a payroll protection program loan, then you subtract that. That's it. That's your formula. That's what you get. And
That sounds way too simple. It sounds
yeah,
like that's how it should have always been. But when you
yeah.
say it that way, you're thinking, well, duh.
Yeah, and so, those that were in existence, we tried to keep it very simplistic, to keep it moving forward. We didn't try to figure in things where people got maybe grant money from the state during the CARES program before, or they got local money that was a grant, or if they got an economic injury disaster loan from SBA. We basically said we aren't counting any of that. So we're literally trying to stay focused on keeping this simple, really taking care of a group that has really suffered severely during this pandemic.
What if, and this only comes to mind because several months ago I had a guest on the show who purchased a restaurant in January of 2020, not really realizing exactly what he was in for. How does it work if somebody did that in the beginning or even in the middle of this pandemic?
Okay, and that's really a great question. And that's the other thing that I actually have said that SBA's learned a lot, because we have seen that with like the payroll protection, we've had deadlines and people couldn't partake because they weren't in existence. But yet they had expenditures to get their doors open, because everybody knows you just don't turn on a light switch and there's the restaurant. Turn on a light switch, there's the food truck. It takes time to get that all set up. And that part was being missed. And with this one, so there's a second group that let's just say they came into existence in the second half of 2019, and or they came in existence, as you use the example of January 2020. Those can also, but theirs will be a different formula to use, where they basically will do uh, an average of their gross that they did for the year, and then they will multiply that by 12, and then they subtract it by the gross if they have any gross, and if they had a PPP, payroll protection, they subtract that. If they don't, then that's their number. And then we have the third group that haven't opened their doors yet, but are planning to open. They're in final phases, but they had to buy equipment. They had to get food items. If they're getting a fixed locality, they got to get chairs, dining room sets, all that. So we've actually had that too, and they have to show their receipts and things like that. So they would get partially funded back for that also.
That's kind of been one of the silver linings that I have found throughout this pandemic is there are a lot of resilient business people out there and entrepreneurs that didn't just go hide in a corner of a room in their house. They saw an opportunity, and a lot of new businesses have started and opened in the middle of this pandemic.
Yeah, and you've brought up an excellent point. When a year ago, when I was on a radio show, they asked me, where do you think the next sector is going to be? I said, it's going to be restaurants. And they looked at me and said, you're crazy. And I said, no, there will be a huge demand of people wanting to start restaurants. And I said, because people love food. And if one restaurant closes, there's always another person that's going to invest to go into that locality to have restaurants. And then what a lot of people don't understand, restaurants typically, if you go out and look around, when you go out to eat, restaurants are in clusters, they're
Mhm.
together. And people always say, why don't you want to be? I said, no, think about it. As Americans, we talk about our impatience. So if the line is too long, we're going to go someplace else. That's why they stay in clusters, and they're different types of flavors, because then that way everybody can benefit.
You mentioned a second ago if it was somebody that was about to open and they had expenses like furniture and equipment, is there stipulations as to what this money can be used for?
Absolutely. It's almost in a lot of ways like a working capital loan. So, they could use it to pay expenses. They could use it to payroll. So it's anything that's business related. So buying food, those type items, besides the what we call capital investment, pots and pans, whatever it may be, barrels for the wineries, the breweries, those type things. But it's pretty much like a working capital loan concept. And as long as you're following those guidelines, and as I tell people, just document it, you're going to be fine.
And that was going to be my next question is payback at the end because I know the PPP loans were designed as a loan that would convert to a grant if you spent them on what you were supposed to spend them on. Is this the same kind of concept?
No, actually, this is really different. This is a true grant. The money goes to them, but it's being asked that they keep records. So in case Congress asks later that we do an audit check of these particular entities that benefit it, to make sure that they use the funds properly. So that will be a question that could come from Congress, and that's why we're warning people, because if Congress mandates that, we have to do that.
And where do people go to apply? Is that on your website? Is there a separate website somewhere?
No, actually, it's if you go to sba.gov/, restaurants with a S on the end, you can get in there and get yourself rolling. The FAQs are there, everything. Then also, if you go same website, sba.gov, but restaurants instead of S, put ES, and that'll get you into the Spanish version.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, can you give me the details on the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant?
Yeah, love to.
Okay, we're going to come back in just a couple of minutes and continue our conversation. We are pre-recording with Carl Knobloch. He is the district director for Virginia. He's based out of the Richmond district office for the Small Business Development Center. We've been talking in this segment about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund that was part of the American Rescue Plan Act. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. So hang in there.
Got a financial decision to make or a goal to reach, but you don't know where to start? You've come to the right place. Introducing Quick Money Chats with the Northern Shenandoah Valley Financial Education Program. Visit tinyurl.com/Quick Money Chat to schedule a virtual chat with a staff member or trained volunteer. We won't tell you what to do, but we will give you the tools you need to choose wisely. And because Virginia Cooperative Extension is part of Virginia Tech and Virginia State, your land-grant universities, you can be sure that our information is credible and trustworthy. And you'll know that we aren't trying to sell you something. Maybe you want to improve your credit score, or reduce your banking overdraft fees, or even figure out if you can afford to buy that car. Sorting through tons of information on the internet can be overwhelming, and sometimes it can be hard to know who to trust. Schedule a Quick Money Chat and get the information you need to take action. Go to tinyurl.com/Quick Money Chat and get financial education personalized for you.
Welcome back to the Valley Today. I am your host, Janet Michael. It is the Valley Business Today on a Wednesday, as usual, as you are listening to the show today. We, however, have pre-recorded our conversation. We are chatting with Carl Knobloch. He is the District Director for Virginia. He is based out of the Richmond District Office for the Small Business Administration. We are talking about two programs that were included in the American Rescue Plan Act. In the first segment, we talked about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. We're going to talk in a second about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. But we were chatting during the break, Carl, and you were telling me that this is also unique because you've created some really interesting public-private or private-public partnerships to help the restaurants get this application in even easier than what we talked about in the first segment.
Yes, instead of depending on that, as I call it, the government website, which has a tendency to crash, we've given other options. So a lot of restaurants have what we call point of service tools. So like they work with Square or they work with Toast and other ones. That way they're able to actually, we have agreements with them and they have the application on their sites and the people can actually go through there. And because all their information's there, it's easy to download. And so everything connects.
And you're right. I mean, I can't remember the last time I went to any of our local restaurants and they weren't using Square. I mean, very few of them are using the old time cash registers anymore. And if they are, that was a pivot they probably should have made a year ago.
Yeah. And you hit it perfect because, you know, of people taking orders to either come pick up or be delivered. Those have really become essential. And we were really excited that these private entities actually stepped up and offered to help with this to make it easier for the restaurants and the breweries and all that. So we truly appreciate that.
I love those that use Square because I have a Square account for my business and personally. So it emails me my receipt. I don't have to worry about where did I put that, especially if I'm going to use it later as a write-off for some reason. Yeah. So I think that is a great idea. And I'm really glad that was, you know, we touched briefly on this at the top of our conversation about all the lessons that not only restaurant owners and business owners have learned in the last year, but that the SBA and the government has learned in the last year.
Correct. Absolutely.
So let's talk about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. What are the details for that? Who was that geared towards?
Okay, that's really a true as I call government grant. Okay, and what I mean by government grant, it actually has real guidelines that people have to really follow. So they actually had to go in and register on a site that you can't even pursue the grant if you're not even on that site. So they had to take that step, and then they had to follow all the guidelines that are mandated by the grant, that you have to keep these records, you have to document this, all that. So there's more steps, and a lot of these entities are used to it because a lot of them are nonprofits, and that kind of, they're used to that arena. So a lot of people, when they sit here and they think about the Shuttered venue, you know, the easiest one for people to understand is movie theaters. That's the easy one. But to throw a flip on it, you'd think a drive-in movie theater would qualify, but it doesn't.
Really? Because we have
Yeah.
one of those right here in
Yeah.
the Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah. And it's the way the guidelines were written by Congress and that we had to follow. So what a lot of people don't understand, it's fixed seating. So it literally has to be seating that's bolted down. So it can't be like a lot of wedding venues thought they would qualify, but no, their seating is not fixed. It moves around and everything.
Now, what
So,
about places like, for example, Wolf Trap? I guess they have some fixed seating, but the bulk of their seating is the lawn.
yeah, yeah. But as long as they have, there's other factors then that come into play that you may still qualify because you may not have total fixed seating, but you have partial. But the other can be counted because then do you have ticket sales? Do you have your own lighting set up? Do you have your own mixing set up? Those type things. So there's other factors that get included to make sure that that's being identified. So this one, you can be a for-profit entity or a nonprofit, where the restaurant, you can only be a for-profit. So, you know, it's totally different that nonprofits can't even compete in the restaurant one. So this is kind of how this came into play. The other thing is we had a lot of questions with people that do lining up performances and for different places and things like that. And what we found was discovery is that these people that are lining up do combination of things. So they do sporting type events and all that kind of stuff. And so you had to figure out, okay, is 70% of your business in performance? If it is, you qualify. If not, then you don't. And so that's kind of where they ended up, that people were also upset because they couldn't partake because that wasn't their main line of business.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, there are places here in the Shenandoah Valley, like the Barns of Rose Hill, that would do performances. They would have concerts. There are a lot of community theaters that would do live plays. None of that happened, of course, during the pandemic, but a lot of them either had some or all of their seating fixed and all of the things that you mentioned. So that's perfect for them to be able to recoup some of those ticket sales that they lost.
Yeah, and that's where the whole idea behind this is trying to focus on those sectors where you know, you couldn't go to a play anymore. All of a sudden, the doors. And as I always try to tell everyone, there was a ripple effect, because think about it. A lot of these venues where they're located, what surrounds them? Restaurants, because, or breweries or wineries, because why? People there partake before or after. And so this ripple effect of these two sectors working hand in hand so much, but we never really think about it. The other group that was included in this was museums. So, you know, those that didn't got hurt a lot too, because they were mandated to be shut down much longer than a lot of other places, because especially those that were government or by either owned by local government or state government, stay closed longer, but they can also participate. So some government entities can participate. Universities, you know, they have their plays and programs and things like that. So also they may be able to participate depending on how the entities are set up.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about the universities. When you said museums, I've had several museum curators on the show over the last year and how they've struggled to try and figure out how to find that balance. Is the process for how much they can get the same as it is for the restaurants if they opened a little bit or maybe did some outdoor things that weren't traditional?
Uh, Pretty much theirs is focused on showing their sales, okay, and from 2019 to 2020, because theirs is the max they can get is 5 million for a particular location and 10 million total if they have multiple locations. Um, the thing that comes into play with all this when you talk about the Shutter venue, when you get to that $5 million mark that you're trying to identify, when you're looking at your receipts, um, we're not getting nitpicky about donations and all that kind of stuff because we know those are part of what keep your entity going in that. One stipulation in there, though, is like if you get money from the federal government, if 10% or more of your revenue comes from federal government, you can't compete in this because you're already getting a fair amount of money from the federal government
And that makes
related.
sense because that would be double dipping in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've dealt a lot with that where people are just trying to kind of stretch it a little bit, and we're just saying, no, you have to understand the rules are set uh, to a particular limit. And like I said, because it is a true, as I call, federal government grant, we have to follow the rules and stipulations. And one of the things is the first 14 days was totally focused on those people that lost 90% or more of the revenue in 2020. So if they lost that much of their funding, they're the first ones that are getting priority. Then the next 2 weeks is focused on those that lost 70% or more of their funding. And then after pretty much a month, then it kind of opens up to everyone else.
And is it the same stipulation that if you do all of your numbers, but you did get a PPP loan, that has to be deducted and then you get your final number?
Yes, the PPP is if it's recognized before you got the funding, you don't have to count it. Okay, so it's slightly different. So it's that context is it doesn't penalize, or I don't call it penalize. It just doesn't pull the funds out. Where with these, it's just kind of we know you got it, but if you're pursuing a PPP and you're pursuing the Shuttered venue, you're going to have to make a choice which one you're going to look at. So that's kind of the stipulation they've put out there. So they're trying not to, once again, I give them credit, they're trying not to count other money they might have gotten that helped them during that difficult time, not to penalize them. So that's been a good thing from that standpoint.
So the first thing, if somebody's listening right now, the first thing they need to do, if I understand this correctly, is go get registered and then apply.
Yeah, if they're not registered, they're probably late to the game already because SBA pretty much went about 3 weeks of just giving people time to get that registration in what we call sam.gov, to get themselves in the system before they actually launched it. And unfortunately, we launched and we crashed like the other ones we did, which then closed it down for a couple of weeks, and then we just reopened up the last week in April. So we've roughly had a little over 10,000 applications at this point in time. We still have several thousand in the queue that are being processed through, trying to focus on those 90% ones first, then going to the 70, and then thereafter the others that may remain.
If there is a decision by Congress to add more money into this pot in the future, should somebody go ahead and still get registered now, or should they just watch and wait to see if that happens and then go register?
As we tell people, Shutter Venue had a nice amount of money put to it. So we don't see right now at this point in time that potentially being an issue. We see it more of an issue with the restaurant sector, the impact where Congress may have to add extra funding.
Is there a web address like for the restaurants for the Shuttered venue?
Yeah, it's at the SBA.gov and we /SV as in Victor OG. Then that will get them in there to start their process, working through it. And because it is a grant, that's the only place you can actually do the application.
So can you tell me before we wrap up one more time, where can people go to get started on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund?
Okay, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, you go to SBA.gov /restaurants. That will get you into everything. It will get you into telephone number if you have to call about questions. Even us, we're taking questions locally. On the Shuttered venue, it's SBA.gov /SV as in Victor OG, and that's where you go to pull that up. Well, we try once again, we at the district office level really can't answer questions about that because it is a grant and it's like a competition. And so we can't answer questions because that'd be a conflict of interest. If I tell you this, then I have to make sure everybody else knows that. So we're kind of hands off, but a great resource, and you talked about it earlier, SCORE and the Small Business Development Centers, Women Business Centers, and Veteran Business Outreach Centers are a great asset for both of them, the Shuttered venue and also the restaurant, to provide assistance and guidance.
And that's great. We do have a pretty active SCORE group here in the Shenandoah Valley. Christine Kriz is our director at the Lord Fairfax Small Business Development Center.
Yes.
She does an amazing job. So
Yeah.
I'll make sure that in the show notes page, I put links to both of those organizations as well so people can reach out. But Carl, I thank you for taking some time today to explain all of this to me. I do appreciate it, and I appreciate the work and the help that you guys are doing to kind of give everybody a boost as we try to get out of this pandemic.
Well, thank you so much, Janet, for actually taking the time to hear us, and also that hopefully you'll partake of the restaurant grant and hopefully help you move your business forward.
Absolutely. We are going to wrap up our conversation today. We have been chatting with Carl Knobloch. He is the district director for Virginia, based out of the Richmond district office for the Small Business Administration. We have been talking about the American Rescue Plan Act. It includes the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. Details and links to everything that we talked about today are in the show notes page at theriver953.com. Just click on the podcast tab. I will be back tomorrow because we're pre-recording here on the screen with Carl. As people are listening to the show on Wednesday afternoon, I will have gotten my second vaccination this morning at Lord Fairfax Community College, where I am, as you're listening to this, have already recorded. As I am recording it, have not yet. So I don't know what Brandy and I are talking about tomorrow. Meet me back here tomorrow to find out.